Hi guys, this is richmeribosspodcast.com. So this is the Airsoft podcast for February. As you can probably guess from the title, I'm just wanting to go through pretty much what's changed in Airsoft in the last 10 years. Only because obviously I've been doing this now for over 10 years and I pretty much just wanted to go through what's been happening, what's changed since I started. And also sort of hopefully where the future's going. So with this one, what's really changed in Airsoft? Well, pretty much everything in the last 10 years. All elements of the actual sport, hobby, call it what you will, have changed over the last 10 years. So one of the major things that I've found changed myself, obviously there's all the electronics associated with Airsoft that have changed. So you've got your batteries that are in your guns. They've now changed. They used to be, back 10 years ago, there was no such thing as a LiPo battery or a lithium battery within Airsoft, bar the lithium coined batteries that you put in your red dot sights. They were all either NiCad or NIMH, so they were either nickel cadmium or nickel metal hydride. Now with those, obviously NiCad, when you did all the charging, everything like that, you had to have the battery physically run flat before you could charge it again, otherwise it develops what they called battery memory back in the day. And you just had a bog standard charger, literally a little box that just converted your 240 volts down to whatever. It didn't matter, you didn't have to do any specific settings for these chargers, you literally just plug and play. And yeah, it was a case of what you'd probably call a large LiPo battery these days was a standard mini battery back in those days. So I haven't got them to hand, but with the mini batteries, they are pretty much that sort of size. So if I just trying to see if I've got anything on my desk, but with my phone, so this is a Samsung S7 to give you an idea. The batteries were about that big for the mini size, and they were bigger than that for the large size. I have one of the large 9.6s still. Now the biggest problem this presented was the only real sort of guns you could use front wide for, if you weren't using a battery pouch or a PQ box with a weird configuration in it, was you had to use a solid stock or use the foregrip of an M4 and M16 to actually house your battery for front wired. Now there has been a lot of changes in the past few years with this. Obviously now we're on LiPo batteries. Now LiPo batteries, you can get them literally as small as that, pretty much, to go in the stock tube for one cell, or ones that small that they use to run the MOSFETs in HPA guns, and they go all the way sort of up to large size that you can use for all weekenders that were the size of mini batteries back in the day. Now personally, I used the large 9.6s in my NIMHs. I used to have I've still got it somewhere in the cupboard, an M4 with a full solid stock on that I used to use. And then when I switched over to LiPos, I started using collapsible stocks again, which is a lot nicer. They look a lot better. You're not limited to the fact of every single sort of AEG you've had to have a full stock pretty much, otherwise you couldn't use a battery that would last all day, let alone all weekend. And now you can run around with a battery. You can actually have a stock with two batteries in it that you just swap over, and you've got your batteries for pretty much a full weekend. Apologies if you can hear anything in the background. My neighbour has just decided to start drilling where he's redoing his bathroom. So yeah, one of the ones that I've got is I've got the Magpul EPS enhanced polymer stock, and that one in the back you actually have enough room to run a stock tube LiPo or a bridge stock LiPo down the sides, and then still have enough room at the back for a full mini lipo. So I have two 7.4 lipos, and I've my large mini one sits down the bottom. Then I've got my crane stock one, and these basically pick up and they will give me the full sort of weekend plus playing out of one set of batteries in one rifle. So all I have to do at the end of the day when we get back, if I'm doing a weekender and we sort of camp up or whatever and put guns away, is all I have to do is disconnect the battery and I'm good to go. If it goes down the field, all I've got to do is ping the back cover off my stock, swap the battery cable over, job done. 10 seconds, max you down, and you're sorted. So yeah, a lot of it recently has changed. I mean, if you go through, let's say, well, thanks Spooky. You guys, you will get to meet Spooky soon. We are planning on doing a dual stream on Twitch. So if you go over to my Twitch, twitch.tv/Arabos24, or if you go over to Spooky's, which you've just seen his name pop up there, and that will pretty much bring down everything on there for you. And what we're going to do is look at doing a joint stream soon, joint podcast, because he's one of my real life friends from work, and we do pretty much have the same interests, so we will be going through all this together and hopefully sort of expanding the empire, so to speak. So yeah, anyway, with AEGs, one of the main things that's changed is MOSFETs. Back when I first started, there was no such thing as MOSFET. They'd only just started doing micro switches in some of the M249s. And now it seems that every single gun that comes out has a MOSFET or has a micro switch. And what this does is it controls the fire rate. You can actually have pretty much instant trigger response, and they are really cool. I've got them in pretty much all of my M4 AEGs, because you can, like I say, you can program them up. You can do them to give you 3-round burst. You can do them to give you single shot only, everything like that. One of the other internals that's changed massively over the past few years is with batteries going from Tamiya to Dean's connectors. Now, when I first started, Dean's connectors were never heard of. They came out probably about 5-6 years ago, and they're a lot better than Tamiya for conducting. For all the conduction methods, they're brilliant. They can up your rate of fire a little bit, of course the current can get there quicker, and they're a lot sort of safer in terms of all your electronics parts will be covered up by either shrink wrap and there's no horrible pins to try and pull out or come loose or anything like that. And like I say, the other thing that we got is dual sector gears. Now, I don't personally run one. I can never see the need of running one, but the guys that want stupidly fast trigger response or just want to have pretty much a hose of BBs going at people, the dual sector gears basically allow a stupidly insane rate of fire. We're talking 40-50 rounds a second sometimes, and going through that way. And the other thing that I've not actually got down on my notepads that I've just thought of is barrels. So we've actually now, a lot of AEGs come with a tight bore as standard, which when I first started, you would pretty much every AEG came with like a 6.06 to 09 barrel, and if you wanted anything tighter, you had to buy an aftermarket 6.03 barrel on there, whereas now a lot of the newer AEGs are actually coming with it in. The other thing you also get now is there's the invention of R-hopping. Now if you haven't heard of this, you basically end up with a hop rubber that's got a sleeve over it, and then it has basically can put more pressure on the hop rubber evenly and makes it that you have a patch over the top, and that patch basically gives you that even spread of the hop and just gives you a lot further range. Now, personally, I don't have one of these. The only reason I don't have one is I'm happy with the ranges I get, and also I have in most of my AEGs, I have the Mad Bull tight bore in the barrels and Mad Bull blue rubbers. pair these with the Mad Bull hop unit, and because that one's a cylindrical one, it doesn't actually have the hop coming off at all. Excuse me. And they're pretty, I mean, in my mind, they're like the old Prometheus AG hop units that you used to get, and they're a lot cheaper as well. Plus, with the Mad Bull ones, you can actually attach a tracer unit to the side of it if you wanted to go down that route. Now, next one we're going to go on to was sniper rifles changing. Now, I'm big into my sniper rifles. Most people that know me at Airsoft know I'm big into my sniper rifles. Now, there are a lot of it is the same. The few things that have changed is there are a lot more rifles coming out now with realistic magazine placement. Now, by that I mean on the old VSRs, your magazine was always way up here in the stock somewhere, and then your same with the L96s, you used to have a collapsible magazine that sat way up the front of the stock somewhere, whereas now they've actually done different methods of doing it. But Tokyo Marui have done what they call a loading ramp, so you basically have your magazine in the right place right next to your trigger, and then there's a little ramp that pushes the BB up into the hop unit forward. So with that, you get sort of all your BBs loading up this ramp and pushing into the hop unit. The other way that they've done it is also what Ares have done with the Striker system, where it's a shorter piston. You don't get as much air volume out of the piston. Now, the whole myth and legend around this, I've gone over this in previous podcasts, and it's all out there on the internet. The whole thing of because it's a shorter piston, you can't get as much air pressure out of it, or you can't get it up on the FPS is a complete and utter lie. Now, the one thing with that rumour, and I'll go over this briefly, this was started by Novrich. Now, this was started mainly by Novrich on YouTube because about 2 months after the initial release of the Ares Striker AS01, funnily enough, his SSG-24 came out. So he basically slated the sniper rifle that came out just before his to up sales on his own one. Now, it's complete and utter rubbish. He's been proved wrong. There's a whole Facebook group, there's a whole community with Discord channels and everything on the upgrades, to the point of Ares have bought out the Striker AS02, which is the shorter barrel version now, and we've proven that we can get the same cylinder volumes out of them. So it's one of those ones of someone slandering it. In all fairness, I'm surprised Ares didn't actually just go after him with some form of lawsuit for it, but there we go. But yeah, you get the shorter piston, so your magazine goes from the right place, your BB loads from the right place, and everything works. The other thing that we've got obviously now I've put down bullpup rifles because of the popularity of the SRS. Now, a lot of this is down to Kicking Mustang, Airsoft Cam Man, people like this that have got them. I haven't personally got one just because I can't afford one. They are stupidly extortionate these days. I do know one player at my local site that has one. I don't know if he's still got it because I've not actually spoken to him for a while. But these are brilliant rifles. They are bullpup. Back in the day, the only bullpup you could actually get was the WA2000, which were pretty much rocking horse. I know one person, Disco Shrew, who actually had one. He did end up selling it just because he sold all of his gear. And that's the only time I've ever actually seen one in person. And I know he hunted high and low to get that. So it's one of those ones that they were rare at the time. So next bit, we'll do a little break, and then when we come back, we're going to go through gear change. Obviously, what's changed combat gear wise, and obviously a few other bits in terms of the invention of other technologies that have come in. But I'm not going to spoil it because we'll go through it when we come back. Okay, guys, we are back. So let's go through what's changed in combat gear over the last few years. So one of the main things that's changed is obviously what we wear. Camos come on. I mean, back in the day, you could only get sort of UK DPM, US Woodland. You could get Danish, and I think you could only just get German Flecktarn. There was none of this digital camo released anywhere. There was no MTP. There was no multicam that you see these days now. The biggest problem was this wasn't released as yet to the public, only because it had only just come out for the actual forces. And obviously the surplus places couldn't get hold of any of it. Now, these days, MTP is everywhere, multicam is everywhere. You're very hard pressed to actually go to a game day these days, be it in Woodland, CQB, Urban, anywhere like that doesn't have some form of MTP or multicam around. Now, myself, I prefer, with my trousers, I have, in all fairness, I have a set from IKEA that are digital Woodland style ones. And I also have a set of Italian Vegetato, as they call them, set, which are a digital pattern. And then on my top half, I'll either generally wear a US Woodland jacket. I've got multicam hoodie. I've got several different things that I'll wear. So it's normally either Woodland type things on there. Yeah, bring back M81. It was one of the oldest, best ones ever. You can still get it from surplus stores, but you know we've got to search and hunt high and low to find it these days. Some units do still wear it, special forces wise, just because it was a better camo than what multicam is for pure Woodland, things like that. But it's one of those things. A lot of places like that, they'll just special forces units, private contractors, things like that, they'll just wear what the hell they want. So one of the other things that's changed is obviously how we carry our gear. Now, back when I first started, and I've still got my very first rig in the cupboard hung up, you either had a British Army PLC rig with yoke, you had the assault vests that you could get that were sort of circa First Gulf War, and that was pretty much it, other than chucking magazines in your pockets and what have you. Now these days you have a lot more available. There are a lot of companies out there that do modular, so you've got Molly, you've got whatever Viper called their one, I can't remember now, but they have a modular system that they have themselves, and you can go for a full plate carrier with plates in, without plates in. You can go for chest rigs, you can go for belt rigs, you can go for, I've even seen people just running around with the Molly backpacks on, and just literally have a couple of mags stuffed in a pocket. All sorts of weird and wonderful setups that you can do now. Personally, the last few times when I've played, I went out and I just used my coat, just chucked a couple of mags in for high speed, low drag setup, or I went out on my plate carrier on if I needed to take all my mags that you've seen in one of the previous videos. And yeah, pretty much recently it's a case of like now, when I first started, you had a few of the hard Kydex pistol holsters, things like that. There wasn't really that many. I know Phobos were around, which are still my preferred holsters, just because I've got so many of them and I found their drop leg kit to be great. And you also had a lot of weird and wonderful sort of the old, there were the normal nylon pouches, but the pistol pouch that I had was just a Velcro nylon one that I had to start off with, and then on my vest I had an internal one, on a zip pocket on my chest plate there was actually an internal one that you just put your pistol in on there. So one of the other things that's come around as well is gas blowback rifles. Now 10 years ago there were a few gas blowbacks around. Now originally, way back when, I mean it's like the whole story with HPA, way back when there were hybrid rifles for the MGCs that were around 20 years ago, possibly longer. But now it seems that every company in the dog's got a gas blowback rifle of some form. You've got TM doing them, you've got WE doing them, KJ are doing them, ASG are obviously rebranding some and doing their own. You've got, trying to think now off the top of my head, you've got Tanya Koba doing a few, and they're all out there for everyone to sort of look at and find. And one of the other things that you get is also did come out a few years ago. I've not really heard a lot of them since, thanks to TM's recoils and things like that. Now, years ago when I first started, if you wanted a realistic rifle and you wanted recoil, and you wanted gun stopping on empty, things like that, the only choice you really had was the Systema PTW. Now, the base rifle itself was in thousands and thousands of pounds, and they stripped down like the real thing. Then they bought out the Celsius DTW and CTWs, and they were all right. They were a bit in terms of reliability, things like that. They weren't at Systema's higher level, but they were there for a budget range for people that didn't want to spend 1,500 quid on a base rifle and that was it on there, and then end up spending extra on gears and what have you. Now, one of the other things that obviously has come in recently is recoil AEGs. Now, you start off, you got your basic ones, like one of the very first ones was the G&G L85 and the Army L85. Now, with those, a lot of the time, if you left the actual recoil mechanism working, it shook the gun apart. It was one of these ones of, yeah, you could have this nice realistic bit of blowback on the bolt and everything like that, but it shook the internals apart. So 9 times out of 10, that was disabled. I think pretty much everyone I know that had an Army L85 disabled the gas blowback just so they could get another few months out of the cylinder before it completely killed itself. Now, these days, you have the TM recoils that are coming out. So they've obviously got the SCAR, they've got the M4 MWS, they've got, I'm trying to think now, I think they've done an AK as well. You've got all the Bolt blowback AGs for the AKs and things like that. G&G do them, even some of their basic range M4s, they do them, even though it's just a annoying clack half the time of the bolt cover just going backwards and forwards, and that's about it because it's pneumatic. There isn't actually any recoil in the shoulder. For that, you have to go expensive and go TM, or you can go for the katanas on there as well. So the WE Katana series are pretty good. I think KJ Works did one as well. I can't remember now. That did a similar AG one, which was probably just a rip off of the TM knowing KJ. Yeah, KWA. Thanks, Ryan. So KWA recoils as well. So with those, you've got a lot of recoil AEGs. Now, these are brilliant for realism, and I have seen these actually in documentaries, things like that, used by the police for training and things like that. I've seen them used by actual special forces, things like that, when they don't want to go and get the rifles dirty, they can pick up an airsoft gun and go training. So it's a similar way to way back in the early 90s and what have you. They used to use paintball and things like that for training, and pick up some of the realistic looking markers and use those just for training and doing all their exercises and what have you. Now, the big thing that has changed over the last 2 years is this little thing that this video will be published to later on, and you'll probably watch it on as well. This little thing called YouTube. Now, I don't know if you've heard of this thing. Now, the one thing that I do enjoy watching airsoft videos on YouTube, but at the same time, it also annoys me at the way that they've become so clickbaity the last sort of couple of years. So way back when, you used to have 10 years ago, you were lucky if you had one person running around with a camera taking pictures that then uploaded them to, well, Facebook was around, but in its primitive form, but uploaded them to like PhotoBucket or something, then shared them on the forum for the particular site. Now, years ago, that was the case, and there was only like one Airsoft YouTube channel, that was Scout the Doggy. Now, John is still going. Obviously, he covers games in Scotland in his home location, so he does Section 8. He used to do the Fort as well back in the day, and he does really good videos. Now, these days, every man and his dog is doing YouTube videos. Now, admittedly, that's what I bought my SJ Cam for, is to do a few videos for Airsoft, but it wasn't for uploading to YouTube or anything like that. It was more for personal, okay, I want to see what it looks like, see how you can do it, and see what the particular, in terms of when you've done gameplay and things like that, what you see, what you pick up on your own actions on there. Now, these days you can get the GoPros. Now, I've seen you get the run cams, everything like that. Now, obviously, you go watch Kicking Mustang, you go watch Airsoft Cam Man, you go watch Novrich, House Gamers, all of those guys. They're running multiple cameras now. Same as Kicking Mustang, he's running a 360 camera on his shoulder. He's running a forward-facing zoom cam on his sniper rifle. He's running a backward-facing GoPro. He's got a GoPro on his hat. Everything like that. Now, one of the things that's annoyed me with Airsoft and the YouTube relationship over the past probably year or so is the fact that everyone these days seems to have a cheater in the video. Now, I've gone over this before. There are previous episodes of the podcast with this on. Now, one of the things that annoys me the most is the fact that we're trying to promote a sport and hobby that is always at risk, in terms of at any given point the government could turn around and say, well, no, you're running around with replica looking guns, we're going to shut the sport down, we're going to ban it in the country for the sake of firearm laws, and etc, etc, etc. And you get all these people doing this, and we're trying to encourage people into the sport because strength in numbers, and all we get is people going, oh look, here's a video, and oh, shock horror, it's got a cheater in it somewhere. 9 times out of 10, yes, you do get people that don't take hits at games, but you could easily edit that out. It's like one person out of the 30 or 40 people that you see on the video. And it's one of those things, I wish people would stop it, because it is hurting the sport more than it's benefiting the sport. I know they say any publicity is good publicity, but in this case, not really. Now, one of the things, one of my friends, Stu, who is over in Taiwan, he has started doing filming of when he goes playing CQB at Bunker over there, and he just uploads raw footage of him playing. That's what I'd love Airsoft YouTubers to do. I don't want all this heavily edited rubbish. I don't want to see the fact of, oh, well, this guy took his hit straight away first time, or I shot this guy first time. I want to see the fact that you missed 6 times before you hit him, or that you did trip up over that log and land and then managed to get a decent shot off, and things like that. I want to see the adversity, not just, oh, well, I play perfect every time and I find cheaters all the time and what have you. But yeah, so that's one of the major things as well, is obviously that the video recording facilities have come along, and obviously these days every man and his dog goes out with his smartphone in his pocket, takes a picture, and then carries on playing. So it's one of those things, if that's come along as well. On there, now one of the things obviously with all of this enhancement is, where are we going to go going forward with Airsoft? Well, hopefully, in my eyes, I'm hoping that they somehow bring out some form of kits for gas blowbacks to make them more friendly for colder countries. So with the UK, things like that. I mean, we can chuck in lower weight bolts, things like that. which helps, but also just to help with consumption, keeping things warmer. Now, I know we do have HPA, which obviously wasn't around 10 years ago, and we have CO2, which was around, but not very rarely used in airsoft. That was more just for air rifle shooting. And one of the things I'm hoping to see is that they're just going to get enhancements in gearboxes. I'm hoping that we'll get brushless motors come in that can stop on a dime. Now, you can get these, but obviously they're stupidly expensive at the minute. But hopefully the prices of those come down. I would like to see sort of more reliability upgrades internally. So again, it's one of those things of 9 times out of 10, if you don't touch it, you don't tamper with it, you'll get a good 5 years out of a gun. If you start tampering with it and upgrading it, that's when it breaks. But I'd love to see it that it's easiest to actually do the upgrades. Now, one of the things that did happen a while ago, the company Modular did a gear set, and the gear set was actually on a frame, and all you did was drop this in your gearbox, and all your gears were already in perfect alignment. There wasn't any shimming needed. It was all done on this little frame. Now, I'd love to see that sort of thing come back again. Just make upgrades and working on guns easier. The other thing I'd love to see is also pretty much thinking, going through and picking up stuff in terms of picking up all your bits and bobs, so make it easy to actually pick up rifles, things like that. Now, I know we have UCARA, things like that, but obviously that relies on you being able to play all the time. I'd love to make airsoft more accessible for the wider mass groups and what have you. One of the main things that we always seem to get is a comparison to paintballers. Now, with paintballers, obviously they changed and went to all their brightly coloured clothes, things like that. And it's one of those things of they now, I mean, you can't go anywhere in the country without there being 3 paintball sites within 10 miles, whereas airsoft sites are few and far between still. They are picking up, and we do hope that they still continue to pick up. One of the things that has changed a lot recently is the styles of play. So we've now gone from predominantly being woodland when I first started to now there's a lot more CQB around, there's a lot more speed soft around, which wasn't really a thing back when I first started. And there's also a lot more sort of urban and different sort of play styles around and things like that. Like back in the day, you were either walking around as an infantry unit, you were doing a lot more simulations type stuff, whereas these days pretty much every game tends to be your attack and defend or capture the flag or something like that. A lot of sites these days don't work it into some form of objective game, or they don't work it into some form of scenario game. Hi, Cubby. So with that, we have a lot of things where we can move forward and move back in some respects. So one of the things I would like to see is a lot more scenario play, because I remember when I first started, one of the brilliant things was how you performed in one game affected your second game, and then affected your third game for your team and what have you. So it gave you that bit more incentive to actually perform better in the game, rather than, oh, well, I don't need to do anything in this because we're either going to win this round or lose this round. There was never any, these days, there's never sort of a clear, oh, this team's the winner, this team's the loser, or whatever. It's always a bit of a mishmash at the end of the day. It's always a, oh, well, you had fun, go home, enjoy yourselves. Whereas back in the day, it used to be a case of, oh, well, Reds have lost this position, so now they've got to fall back to this position and defend that and work the way round, and then do the opposite or start fighting back and get an advantage. I mean, back in the day, we used to have it as if your team was losing badly, you basically got the advantage because some of the marshals jumped on your team that were more experienced players and knew the site, and that helped out massively because you got an extra 4 or 5 people that really knew the site and were veterans at the sport and knew what they were doing. So with that in mind, like I say, hopefully we get a few good things coming up in the next few years. Again, new releases wise, I'd love to see more weapons coming out, but I'd love to see fewer M4s in all honesty and fewer AKs. I know it's boring, but it's one of those things. One M4 is pretty much the same as the other, and there are 1,000,001 of them out there. We don't need to see another one. Please, 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 airsoft companies, if you listen to this, if you watch this or anything like that, or you have any influence with them, please bring out something different. The one thing that I love is different weapons. That's why I have the F2000. That's why I have the Scorpion Evo, even though now it's pretty much mainstay at every site because of the internals works done on it. And it is pretty much, I just want to see companies bringing out more weird and wonderful stuff rather than just your generic M4, AK, G36 style weapons. I want to see some of the more weird and wonderful ones coming out, even if you start doing sort of sci-fi replicas. I know the S&T blasters for Star Wars, so the Han Solo blaster or the E11 Stormtrooper blaster were brilliant. Bring out more of those. Bring out another copy of Judge Dredd's pistol. Bring out the Glock 17 version from the Dredd film with Carl Urban. Go out there, make Hellboy's gun a reality without having to buy a hater from, or a H8R from America and import it. Make a kit that's already on there. Rather than us having to do all the modifying ourselves, yeah, that's some of the fun sometimes, but make a kit that we can just buy. You do all the rest. Marie does all the Resident Evil pistols already. They already do the Samurai Edge. They already do the Long Desert Eagle. They already do the SIG that Leon has in Resi 6 or 7. Do the weapons out of games, out of films. Start making weird and wonderful. We love that sort of thing. It's those individual guns that are more rare on the battlefield and actually get more talking. I know when I turn up, airsoft version of Wingman from Titanfall. Yeah, that'd be nice. I can't think of the gun off the top of my head, but yeah, that'd be really nice. I mean, one of the ones that you get is, a lot of people asked a while ago if you could do the Gears of War chainsaw mod on a rifle. I know some people did 3D print a chainsaw bayonet for this sort of reason, similar to Doom, similar to Gears of War and Warhammer and what have you. People did actually make the chainsaw bayonets on 3D prints. I think you can get them on Shapeways, but they're stupid money. One of the other ones, there was a Thundermaw years ago that looked like it was out of Akira. That was brilliant. Bring out those sort of weird and wonderful guns. I know you've done the Halo gun. They've even got it to the point, I think, with the Halo rifle of it can count down the rounds in the magazine. You did the Aliens Pulse rifle. Bring out another version of that. Bring out the Smart gun. You know, the world is your oyster, airsoft universe. All the manufacturers, think about it. You don't have to build 20 M4s when you can build something separate and unique that people will buy. So with that anyway, it's time to sign off for this one so I can get this uploaded on all the usual sites. I've been Rich from airbrosspodcast.com. Thanks for tuning in. Obviously, thank you to Spooky for the donation. We'll see you guys next time. We'll be back round to gaming, which we have a fair bit to cover on that one as well. So I'll see you guys next time. Thank you very much for tuning in, listening, watching, however you've sort of joined in. And we'll see you guys next time. I've been Rich from my Ross Podcast as always. Have a good one.